Okay. Well, welcome to the Community Living Standard Committee meeting for Monday, November 9th. Attendance at the start of the meeting. We have Councillor Ken Mackay in attendance. We have Councillor Natalie Jolly via Zoom, Councillor Sheena Hughes via Zoom. We have Councillor Jacqueline Hansen via Zoom, and we have Councillor Ray Watkins in attendance in the chamber, or in Douglas Cardinal. I'd like to call the meeting of the Community Living Standards Committee to order for Monday, November 9th, 2020. We have adoption of agenda. Do we have someone who's prepared?
Yeah, I'll move the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Everyone's good? Okay. Agenda's adopted. Appointments. We have Shelley Pesic, who's from Executive Director of St. Albert Family Resource Center, FCS program funding, who's willing to speak today. So Shelley will be asking you to speak when the item comes up for grant funding. And I believe we do have another individual from the Legion who's also wanting to speak today as well. Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. But in Jonah Grad will also have the opportunity to speak today at that time as well. We have approval of minutes, Community Living Standard Committee minutes of October 13th, 2020. We have someone to approve those minutes.
Mr. Hiltz, apparently, Natalie, can you see Douglas Cardinal boardroom here? Can you guys see it?
No.
We don't have video here.
Oh, okay.
Just checking on what's going on here. Sorry, I just got a chat that we can't see us here.
Carrie, I'll move to accept the minutes of October 13th.
Thank you, Councillor Jolly. So minutes, approval of the minutes. Everyone's in favor? Okay, looks good. So new business, election of chair and vice chair, and I'll be leading that before I turn over the chair function. Do we have, I don't believe we have any nominations prior to the meeting, but we have the opportunity to make a nomination from the floor. Do we have any nominations for chair of the Community Living Standard Committee meeting? Mayor Herron?
I think I'd like to nominate Natalie Jolly.
Okay, we have Natalie Jolly wanting to, Natalie, you're prepared to accept that nomination?
I'll accept, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other nominations from the floor? Then ask a couple more times. Do you have any other nominations from the floor? Sheena? Councillor Hughes, sorry.
I wasn't sure if Councillor Mackay was interested as well. I'm just, before I would do any nominations, I just don't know if he's interested in doing the position again.
Okay, Councillor Mackay.
You know, I'm fine. I'm fine with. I think one of the benefits of this committee is to move the chair around, and I was chair for the last however long we had the committee, and I would prefer it if somebody chaired it going forward. I'll get it out. It was hard. That was hard. It must have been a rough weekend.
And that's fine. I just wanted to make sure before we closed everything, his position on it, since he was the former chair. That's fine.
So I'll ask one more time. Do we have anyone wishing to nominate one of the committee members to be chair of the Community Living Standards Committee? Okay, so doing that 3 times through acclamation, I'm pleased to turn the chair over to Chair Councillor Natalie Jolly. Thank you.
Thank you, which brings us to the nominations for vice chair. Do I have any nominations from the floor? Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
I nominate Ken Mackay.
Councillor Mackay, do you accept?
Yeah, let's create a position of past chair. Yeah, I'll accept for sure. It's a it's a rigorous task, so I'll do it.
All right, I'll call one more time. Mayor Heron or Councillor Mackay, any other nominations? Going once, going twice. Councillor Mackay is acclaimed as vice chair, which brings us to, I guess we're skipping back to appointments. And I understand Tracy would like to go first for this. Is that right? Okay.
That is correct.
So we've got Tracy with the presentation of the community satisfaction survey. There you are. Welcome. I'll leave it to you.
Certainly. Good morning, folks. Thank you so much for letting me jump on the agenda. It's a packed day, given that we're doing sessions for you tonight. So I am going to move ahead and just try to share my screen. We'll see if that works today. It doesn't want to work today, of course. Let me get back to where we are. Sorry, guys. There it is. Let's give this a crack here. Where did they go? Okay, share, get rid of that. There we go. Let's go ahead and get started. So very excited today, people, to be presenting your community engagement for 2020. So normally this would have been the survey that we usually conduct on your behalf, but given the situation with COVID-19 and with a number of things happening in the community, we decided really to progress with a bit of an abridged project this year, which I'll go through and share those details with you. So this year we conducted a bit of a shorter survey, focused just on some of those key performance indicators that we measure on your behalf, looking at specifically at budget this year, as well as doing a bit of a check-in with the community in terms of just overall concerns or level of impact of COVID-19. So again, our objectives this year, we did assess quality of life for the city of St. Albert. We did look into perceptions on property taxes and financial planning. We did assess some top priorities for the city, as well as doing a bit of a dive on the COVID-19 and impacts that your residents are feeling in the city of St. Albert specifically. So our general public survey, which again is random and representative, those are the results I'm presenting today. We did have a total of 424 completed the interviews based on, again, us reaching out by telephone, as well as using a bit of social media to get those younger populations. So we did weight the data in terms of gender and age to ensure that it was representative and comparable to previous data that we've collected. Our margin of error this year is 4.7%, 19 times out of 20. In addition to that, though, we did also provide an open link, which again, we all know is more of a public engagement tool. This was advertised on the city website as well as in the newspaper, just to allow others to provide that feedback. So I know that you have those results. They are comparable in many ways to the information I'm presenting today, but with the smaller survey size, we just decided to move forward with the general population results today. So we have compared these results where we can with the 2019 information, just to give you a bit of a sense in terms of change or benchmark. So overall, when we look at overall quality of life, we did see a bit of a shift this year. So not huge changes in the poor or very poor categories. So we're still looking at that 3% cumulatively, but we did see a bit of a shift from very good to good, from 56% down to 40%. So overall, these ratings are still quite high. But when we look at them in comparison to previous years, we did see a bit of a slide from the very good to good. We did also assess just ownership versus rent. We did see a bit of a boost in the ownership this year as compared to rent, but we did see also a number of individuals that were living with someone who owns, so in a more of a roommate situation this year in our respondent base, but just to keep that in mind as we're looking. Really, we start to see some impact or changes in data. And again, we do have to keep in mind that this was collected right at the beginning of the fall here. So, you know, this has been a challenging time for folks, and we're seeing that reflected in our numbers. So excellent value for tax dollars still at 5%, though we did see some declines in the very good and good value. Fair is held steady, but when we look at the way that that has filtered through the funnel, really the poor value this year for tax dollar doubled this year from 9% in previous years to 18%. And then 2% or don't know, just given the timing of the survey, that's where we saw those results. When we look at those that gave us some information about what it is that they like, my apologies, what it is that they, the main reasons they still felt they were getting good value. Again, satisfied with the services they're receiving. They're talking about snow removal, road maintenance, parks and trails. Though there was even a hint, even in those that gave good, very good, or excellent ratings, of concern about fiscal responsibility and spending this year. Everybody is very concerned with where their sources of funds are coming from and going out to this year. So a bit of a reflection on that level of concern. When we look at respondents who rated very fair or poor, again, fiscal responsibility was top of the list, and taxes continuing to rise was the biggest concerns. Snow removal still hit the list, and the timing of this was good prior to our big dump this weekend. But just in terms of overall spending and taxes, I mean, really, we're looking at almost 50% of the responses in this category just being about spending, concerned about taxation. And again, when we look even lower in the list, you add up the taxes are high in comparison to services, as well as high compared to other cities. So I think, your residents have thrown out the challenge to you in terms of taxation. And this was, of course, prior to publishing the budget information in the Gazette that went out last week. So do keep that in mind. When we look at support for various tax strategies, an inflationary tax to maintain the current level of service was actually declined to 44% this year, almost solely being put into the tax decreasing to reduce the level of service at 20%. And when we look at the it depends category, a lot of that was circling around. It depends on when things return to normal. It depends on, how often rec centers are going to be used, when those limitations on attendance for certain things is going to change. So the it depends category this year was all over the mark. So you'll see that these results, again, are very atypical in 2020 compared to all of the many years that we've collected this information on your behalf. When we look at, again, percentage of tax increase that they would be willing to accept, 39% were at the 0% mark, 3% just slightly above that, really the vast bulk, or almost 80% of your responses being no more than 2 to 3% in terms of a tax increase, with that 0 at 39%. Again, this was prior to the announcement going out in the newspaper, so we do need to keep in mind that, of course, you've come out with a projected actual slight decrease, or almost hovering right around that 0% that was preferred. When we look at priorities, traffic, roads and roadways is still top of the list in terms of importance, but you're seeing that budget fiscal responsibility creep in here at 15%, attracting more business and shopping options at 14%, and then the rec facilities at 13%. When looking at how to focus effort and time in the next year. When we look at what services or programs respondents would like you to prioritize, again, recreational facility and programming and services at 14%. But then we have healthcare and medical services, which has never been in this list. That we all know that this isn't necessarily a direct provision of service by the city. So again, 9% have come out of nowhere, just saying really important to focus on healthcare, regardless of what level of government you are at the moment. When we look at reducing, so again, very rare to see this in the city of St. Albert, but art, statues, and landscaping projects were felt to be a little more nice to have as opposed to need to have in 2020, as well as recreational programming, just given the caps on participation and that type of thing. And then arts and culture at 6%. So seeing those as being slightly higher up in the list is unusual for the city of St. Albert, but that being said, it's an unusual year. As well, though, keep in mind that none of these outside of decorative art were in double digits. So really, it's kind of this broad across the board, just be careful with how you're spending is being the recommendation that's coming from residents this year. When we look at the overall impact, so here we're into our COVID-19 questions specifically. When we look at our overall impact, 43% are giving you a 4 or 5 rating out of 5 in terms of the impact their household has experienced. 30% at 3, and really only a quarter giving you a rating of 1 or 2. So there has been some significant impact in the community. When we look at how that impact has materialized, being isolated from family and friends, limited social interaction is being mentioned by 1/3 of your respondents. Job loss, layoffs, and unemployment at 20%. Closures and restrictions on programs or things being offered by the city mentioned by 17%, and then reduced income mentioned by 11%. So we have quite a few measures here. When we look at the overall percentage, you'll see that some households are probably being impacted by more than 1 or 2 of these when we look at the cumulative numbers of this particular question. And then into our demographics. So we had good representation in terms of gender and age. We also had solid, actually slightly younger than some years in terms of participation, in terms of how long or tenure in the community. We had nice representation by our families this year, as well as slightly less participation by city employees at 2%. We usually see that around 4 or 5. And then when we look at our representation by communities, we see a nice distribution of participation across all of the communities in the city of St. Albert. So that's the overview, folks. Now, to give a little bit of context, we now have done kind of a temperature check on COVID in a number of communities. These responses are not atypical. So we have seen these impacts when they're measured in other communities. Spruce Grove is a good example. We're seeing similar trends, and we're seeing similar requests by the community to be as tight with the budget as they are within their household. And that's probably the one thing that came up over and over again is I've had to cut on my budget. I've had to watch what I'm spending on. We need you to do the same. And that's really the biggest piece of, or the biggest theme that I think we saw trend across all of our data. All right. So back to you folks for any questions that I might be able to answer for you.
All right, I'm not seeing hands up. I'm assuming there are some questions. No one? Go ahead, Councillor Mackay.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out which mic to unmute. Tracy, in relation to the last slide in the neighborhoods, so a lot of that, I mean, I guess when you reach out to individuals, I mean, they choose whether they want to participate or not. Is that correct? So was this the survey that was done through just landlines, or was just the actual where residents could engage on their own through other social media?
So both those opportunities were presented, Councillor Mackay. This was the one that is anchored by the phone. So we do have good representation in terms of landline, but we do also augment it now using some targeted social media from a geographic distribution. We just weren't getting good representation from those younger age groups. Cell phones are still difficult to access in the city of St. Albert in a reliable way. So we actually did augment this data collection using some very targeted social media on this particular set of results. In addition to that, we also have the wide open link that goes out to everybody. So you'll see that there is definitely a different age skew on that wide open link. This one is meant to really target and provide that representative sample by age, gender, and geographic as much as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanson, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Tracy. Thanks for the presentation. I kind of wanted to go back to the program prioritization where healthcare and medical services came up to second on the list at 9%.
Yes.
And it's not really truly in our jurisdiction, as you say. They're just asking. I don't know. I'm not sure what they're. My question to you is: did you ask them about this, or was this just came out in some other things that the city needs to be careful about?
Yeah, so this was actually an open end.
Okay.
And so we would normally not see healthcare in a list for municipal service, except in communities where healthcare has been an issue in the community for a number of years. So City of Airdrie, for example, I've heard about healthcare in the City of Airdrie for 15 years until they got their primary care emergency room. So we do tend to see that in communities where healthcare is a concern, though it's not necessarily a municipal responsibility. I think what they're trying to do is just set out their just concern about COVID overall and the handling of that within the community. So I do think there's an acknowledgement that it's not a municipal service, but I do think that's a concern. So it's how can the city contribute and assist with that healthcare level of service. That being said, at 9%, there are probably some people that may misunderstand the city's role in terms of that. Outside of a mask bylaw or other restrictions, that might be where that confusion is coming from.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question to you is I think that generally speaking, people don't necessarily know all the roles that different governments play in anything unless, you know, you work for a city or you're part and parcel of the city. So good to hear that it could be a misunderstanding, and maybe that tells us that we need to help our residents know what we can control and what is semi out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that. That's all I have.
All right. Anyone else? Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Thank you. So when I'm looking at your slide 14 about how the pandemic has affected people, so I'm looking at, so we're basically saying we have 20% of people who've experienced job losses and another 11% that have had their income reduced. That's what I'm reading into this, right?
Correct. Yep.
So I'm just noting, like it seems that people often think that St. Albert's a bit of a bubble that can often be excluded from a lot of the impacts that are happening in other communities. But it looks to me like 1 in 3 people almost have faced either an income reduction or complete job loss, and that the bubble has broken in St. Albert as far as the economic impacts of the pandemic.
I think I would phrase it as being 1 in 3 households, not 1 in 3 people, because this was a household-based question. So I think, you know, there could be 2 incomes in a household, but one of those individuals could have experienced one or both. So I do think we need to be careful how we generalize, but it's correct. It is about 1 in 3 households have experienced either a loss or an income reduction.
Yeah. And that would be, from your experience from other surveys, is that pretty representative of what other communities have been saying as well?
Of the few that we've measured in, yes, that's relatively typical. And I would say slightly on the lower side, but still very typical and within the margin of error of the survey. So.
Okay, so really there's no bubble here for St. Albert as far as the pandemic came into play.
Not in terms of income and job loss, no.
Yeah, and really there could be 2 job losses in there too, like the 20%, it could be more than one person who actually has experienced the issue.
Yeah,
right.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Councillor Watkins, anything?
Yeah, I had a question. You said that the statistics this year were very atypical of the statistics that you've collected over all the previous years that you've collected it for the city. And is it just too simple a summation to say that that's 100% related to COVID and the stress and negativity people have faced from COVID? Or is there some other reason?
I wish I knew the answer to that question. I do think that I've seen this trend occur once before prior to COVID, and it was in Fort McMurray when Fort McMurray was hit by the wildfire and there was a significant impact on infrastructure, or when there's a downturn in the economy that would have impacted Fort Mac as well. So of all of the years I've measured, I have not seen a set of results as heavily impacted in any of my communities as I'm seeing it this year, outside of quote unquote natural disasters that occur in a community. So yes, I've never seen a trend like this before in all of the years that I've been working. So I would love to say that it's not 100% COVID related, but it's pretty strongly causally related there. Without me doing a whole bunch of specific diving, I would say that yes, that's where your primary impact is coming from.
Then a general summation of people's attitudes towards spending and taxation was basically a 0% increase in tax, and just watch the spending and watch the discretionary spending.
Yeah,
is that a general summation?
I think that would be a good summation of the results. It's like, look at every single thing that you can this year, even more so than we have every other year.
Right, which I think Kevin and staff have done a really good job of looking at already. Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions, Madam Chair.
All right, anyone else? Mayor Herron, you're good? Okay, I have nothing, Tracy, so thank you so much. It was
Thanks,
good seeing you
guys.
again, and I guess see you tonight.
Yes, see you tonight. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. So Shelley, thank you for your patience. You are our next appointment, so go ahead.
Morning. Thanks for allowing me to come on and speak to you all. I think that, given that the times that we're in with how COVID-19 has impacted every individual in our community, outside our community, and in the world, I just thought it would be proper for us to come and say to you guys, thank you. Thank you for the support for the Community Services Advisory Committee, putting forward our application for funding. Like everybody, we've seen an increase in the services that are being requested from us. And quite frankly, if we didn't have the support of this grant and other grants, we wouldn't be able to do what we need to do. So the money that we're going to save because of the outside agency grant is going to allow us to put more money into programming. And we are seeing the families that are coming in. We're seeing an increase in the difficulties that they're experiencing. I mean, some of this is due to COVID. Some of this was pre-existing and it's just being exacerbated by COVID-19 with the sense of isolation, the loss of income, the uncertainty that everybody lives with in our daily lives now. So thank you again for the money. It's helping us to put more resources towards strengthening the well-being and the resiliency of our community members, which is really, really what we want to do. So again, thank you on behalf of St. Albert Family Resource Center for allowing me to speak today, and just to say thank you.
Thank you. That was an easy appointment. The work you're doing in the community is great. So
Thank you.
any questions of Shelley before we let her go? No? Councillor Watkins, you're good? I'm going to assume yes. Okay, well, thank you so much, Shelley.
Thank you.
And
Bye, Shelley. Thanks for doing that.
our
You're
next
welcome.
appointment is Jonah, is that right? Let's see if she can get her camera on. She's on mute right now. Oh, there we are. Welcome.
Hi. All right. So I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak to you today. And I want to start by echoing Shelley's words of appreciation, because we are so appreciative of all the support that we've gotten from the City of St. Albert over the years. And it has really made the organization into what it is today. But saying that, 220's changed our world, and seniors have been particularly affected. They are at a higher risk for COVID-19 complications and have had to take more precautions than others. And they're already a population that experiences a lot of major life events like failing health, loss of a loved one, depleting finances, loss of their driver's license, or a need for change in housing, which can lead to isolation and crisis. And we certainly know isolation is a big factor for all of us at this point. So saying that, we are the ones that they turn to when these things happen. We've served as seniors of St. Albert for over 50 years, and in recent years have seen almost 30,000 people through our doors for all kinds of supports, services like transportation and Meals on Wheels, classes, activities, social connections. Unlike most charities, we've been able to earn approximately 60% of our annual revenue through our own earned revenue opportunities. And we've consistently asked the City of St. Albert for less grant funding than we've been entitled to under the formulas. And we've continued to work towards being as self-sustaining financially as possible. This year, when faced with financial challenge, we acted responsibly. We made hard choices in order to maintain services for seniors and ensure we can continue to be viable as an organization. This includes cutting our largest expense, our staff team. We laid off 11 of 16 staff positions between April and September, and only brought back 4 of these people, for a total of 7.5 people to run our operations when we reopened the facility on September 8th. The need for supports for seniors is becoming more critical during the pandemic, and we anticipate the need's going to continue to grow. But we are gravely concerned we will not have the organizational capacity to meet those needs. The reduction we are facing with the recommendations for funding is almost $48,000 between the two grants. This loss, unfortunately, will further affect staffing levels, which in turn will reduce the level of services we are able to offer. As you are hearing from other charities, I'm sure, the ability to fundraise is extremely compromised this year, and our capacity to bring in our own earned revenue is also compromised. So we're turning to you for help. We're grateful for the support that we've always received and understand how the hard choices you're facing also in making the recommendations and trying to decide what has to be cut. But we ask you to reconsider these funding recommendations that have been made. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. I suspect we'll have a couple of questions. Does anyone have any questions? I'm not seeing hands. Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Hi, Jenna. Thanks for coming. I had one question, is that the application was for 263,000, but
Yes.
after it was reviewed, it was actually only eligible for 224,000. So were you aware of that after the review?
I was told it was 219 was the number I'd been given.
Yeah, that was what the committee recommended. And it was in part because the asks for the year were significantly higher than what the budget was allowing. So they have to fit within the budget. They can't recommend past it. Okay. So that was what it came forward with. But the actual amount that was eligible after it was reviewed was actually 224,000.
Okay.
So the recommendation was about 5 less than what, again, because of budget, they went to the max.
Yes.
So were you aware that that was the situation?
No, I was not about the 224, no.
Okay. So, Councillor Jolly, if I can ask Anna, because she just shut up. Can I ask Anna just to perhaps expand on that a little bit, or do you want us to wait till the presentation?
I think if we wait till the presentation to admin, I suspect we're not going to get done by 10:30. So
Okay.
It might be.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to let him. I wasn't sure if she was aware of that or not. So. Just so you're aware, the committee wasn't recommending a $48,000. They're recommending a $5,000, and because of the budget cap, just the envelope that we had. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I suspect we'll have some questions of Anna once we get to, and Connie once we get to that part of the agenda. So thank you for all the work that you're doing with St. Albert Seniors. You guys are
Thank you very much.
doing a good job. Thank you. All right. So with that, we're actually into the presentation from, I believe it's Connie, the FCSS program funding grant recommendations. So Connie, go ahead.
Thank you and good morning, everybody. So this morning I'm presenting information with respect to the FCSS program funding applications for 2021. There were 7 applications received. Of the 7, 2 were brand new, which to me was really exciting that we had never funded before. So that was pretty neat. We had 607,800 available. We actually had a request amongst the 7 grants for 647,214. What's being recommended from Community Services Advisory Committee is $532,081. We've not received an announcement to date from the province with respect to a change in our funding for 2021. So we'll continue with the intent that there will be funding. Of course, funding is always contingent on provincial funding. And the city, just for your knowledge, distributes funding to the agencies monthly. So if there was a change come April, it's an easier adjustment. So I wasn't sure if you were aware of the allocation process. And I wanted to just speak really quickly about the funding change from what was requested to what was actually recommended and why. And so first, one of the requests from actually Stop Abuse and Family Society, the full amount wasn't approved because they couldn't spend all the money from 2020. So they're actually carrying forward. So I approved upon the request to carry forward. So they didn't actually require all the money that was put into the application, and of course didn't know at the time when they put in the application. Some of the requests that came in weren't eligible under the FCSS program funding. And the rest of them were as a result of the same request with the FCSS program funding and the outside agency grant. And so what Anna and I do when we get our applications is we look at them together and we go with the grant that maximizes their funding, which we did with all of them. And so that's the result of less money being recommended based on what was requested. We also, amongst all of the grants, one of the brand new agencies that applied, they got about a half of what they asked for multiple reasons. It's a brand new agency that doesn't have all the controls in place. And so in terms of helping to set that organization up for success for future years, we provided half of the funding, and then there will be some strong recommendations put in place by administration, and we'll work with the organization over the year. Again, to set them up for success, so next year they could apply for more. And I think that's all I have. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. And Connie, just to clarify, that last organization that was out loud?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I like saying that this year. The question I have, I guess, goes back to the Boys and Girls Clubs, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Now, did they come in and they took over the youth mentoring program run by the CIVC? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So can you refresh my memory? Is that about the equal amount that we provided the mentorship program under CIVC, or is that, because that looks like a bigger number to me?
It's very, very close. It's within about 9,000, 7,000 to 9,000, depending on the year. So it's quite close. The difference, of course, being them having to find a space to rent in our community, which of course CIVC staff didn't have to. They were already located here.
Okay, well that helps. It just seems like that was a larger number. So they are delivering that service in St. Albert to St. Albert Youth?
Correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other questions? No. I have one question about the income tax program. So I was under the impression that that's funded federally. So can you maybe explain a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the program is a federal program, but to provide it in your community, you need the volunteers to work with the individuals when they come into the organization. And so that's really the only cost. And then the little bit of advertising that they do. So it's a very nominal cost. The total request was $6,000 for that program. And we actually can only approve about $1,300 because they are getting the funding. They're maximized their funding through the outside agency grant. And it's really just the advertising to get the program known. And it's been well uptake since it's been moved over to the community village from CIVC.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. If there are no more questions, could I get a volunteer to move to the recommendation? Go ahead, Councillor Mackay.
That Community Living Standing Committee recommend to Council that the following applications for 2021 FCSS program funding be approved. Do you want me to read them all? Or
Yes,
can I
please.
just, okay, I can read them all, or I can just say as is outlined in the report.
I know Mayor Herron's nodding, so I'm going to say, yeah, if you could read them, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, cruel. Number one, the community organization is Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Edmonton and Area Society. FCSS program is Big Brothers, Big Sisters of St. Albert. Amount recommended is $64,229.14. St. Albert Stop Abuse and Family Society for the FCSS program of youth counseling, safe education, youth counseling is $41,000 recommended. Safe education is $19,000 recommended. St. Albert Seniors Association, FCSS program is Senior Supports and Services for an amount of $73,138.40. Number 4 is St. Albert and District Further Education Association for their Newcomer Connection program, $23,870. Thank you, Cheryl Dumont. Number 5, Out Loud Foundation for LGBTQ Community Supports and Services. Their outreach, Out Loud Outreach program is $76,000. St. Albert Family Resource Center, Family Life Education, $160,157. And St. Albert Community Village and Food Bank, their income tax program in the amount of $1,534.36, and their community liaison program of $73,153.
Thank you. Any opening comments?
No, I think, their comments were there. These are recommendations coming out of the work from our Community Service Advisory Committee. So I appreciate their recommendations and all the hard work that they put into arriving at these numbers. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? I'm seeing no one. Anything to close?
Nothing.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. We're going to do hands. Sure, we can do hands today. I can't see Councillor Watkins. Is that a yay? That's a no. Okay.
I'm not a voting member.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. We've got unanimous. Which brings us to our next presentation, the outside agencies. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Just a quick presentation as far as the outside agencies. We had 10 organizations apply. There were no new organizations this year. 6 fell into the core category and 4 into the additional services. Initially, when we looked at the total amount requested, we had $713,146. When we went back through and we rechecked each, whether it was an operating staffing expense or a facility expense with the policy, then the revised amount is $673,518 that was requested. And of course, our budget is $9 per capita at $594,738. So we were about 80,000, little under 80,000 oversubscribed. CSAC went through quite a rigorous review of all applications. Every detail of their budget was looked at, discussed once with a draft, and then we actually went back again and reviewed again. So it was a very rigorous evaluation. They really looked at how much additional fundraising beyond just fundraising, but actually fund strategies that the organizations had in place, and certainly had asked me to, which I did, mention to the organizations that we really need to focus on funding strategies moving forward in the event of a pandemic or in the event of any other hardships to the organization or the municipality, in case funding isn't as robust as it may have been in the past. And with that, I have, you've been provided with the recommendations of CSAC. If I can just speak to the Seniors Association. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to meet. They were invited to meet with myself and go through their application, but we didn't. And I did receive the application very late on the due date. So the only difference in this year and last year, as far as operating expenses, those are all the same that were approved last year, but it's in staffing because, as John explained earlier, they did let some of their staff go, and they did not request as many staff as before. So again, as Councillor Hughes mentioned, it was only about a $5,000 reduction in what they actually were eligible based on the policy. And I had, and yes, we did not discuss, we only discussed the positives of what was being brought forward, although I did did send an email yesterday as well to again talk about the policy related expenses, and that, you know, we were staying quite strict to the policy as that was a council directed way to proceed. And with that, I'd take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Anna. we have any questions? No, I guess Councillor Hughes, you were there. Councillor Hanson or Watkins? No?
No, I'm fine.
Councillor Mackay? Nothing? I have questions. So victim services, the recommendations is about $25,000 less than their ask. Can you comment on that?
Sure, I will comment, and if Councillor Hughes has anything to add to that, that'd be great. So it is similar to what was requested last year. Actually, it's the exact same, and it related more to staffing positions. Again, CSAC really discussed, had a lot of discussion around funding, fundraising, expanding your funding sources, and really want groups to not, if they're adding staff, or relying on the city for staff. And I think it came down to not only there was only X amount in the budget, but there wasn't a good or a strong argument or case presented as to why that additional staff position needed funding. And Councillor Hughes, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that would certainly be part of it. And the cost for staffing also just seemed higher than average.
Yeah.
So compared to the other organizations, the salaries were higher than the average that we were seeing. So, and again, there was $80,000 more in asks than what was available. So there were some really tough decisions being made. So that was, every penny was allocated out, but that also meant that some people were not going to get, the majority did not get their ask. And we're getting similar to what they got last year as the best case, because there was $80,000 more in asks. So one of the not strategies, but how we handled the situation was the community village got their full ask, which was $20,000 more almost than what the other ones than the previous year. And so and SAFE got their full ask as well, which again was an increase. So because of, we're almost looking almost $25,000 more in increased asks from one organization, a total of $80,000 more, there has to be some kind of give and take. And so the recommendation was to give what they got last year. And based on what both Anna has said, and just at the looking at the average salary costs as to what was coming in. So that was the rationale behind it. And I mean, it was a really tough meeting for the committee.
Yeah,
Try to figure out how you're going to say no to a lot of organizations when you really didn't want to.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Yeah.
So related to, I guess, Anna, related to your answer about kind of wanting these organizations to really step up their fundraising game. I know you've been asked this question for about every year for the last 10 years. Did VASA get their charity status this year?
That was not a question that was asked to the organization. I have not heard that they have received it. Okay. I'm believing that they have not received it because I think we would have been told that, but it was not a question that was asked of the group. They did, what happened was the committee were to forward questions to me prior to the meeting, and then I would send them out to groups, any questions that they had. And then we had a written response provided at the time of the meeting.
Okay.
So it wasn't asked, yeah.
Thank you. And I know in past years, CSAC has listed these these programs or organizations in order of priority. Was that done this year?
No, we did not go through that facilitation exercise, no.
Okay.
They did have a priority ranking sheet that to use as they went through reviewing the applications to help them determine who might receive higher priority, but we did not go through the ranking star sheet that we have done in the past. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson, I saw your hand jump up there.
Yeah, it was actually just in relation to victim services. I'm just hearkening back on the conversation that council had with them, and I thought that they were trying to maintain some IT support, and I'm not really seeing that in the report. So I'm just wondering if they talked about websites and things like that as part of their grant application.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. They did not apply for any IT support in their application.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you so much.
Councillor McKay, did I see your hand go up?
No, yeah, it didn't. The questions that I had were asked. I guess a general question, if I can, Ms. Ryder. I mean, this being the year of the pandemic and real hardship, as we've heard numerous times, whether through council business or through our task force, was there any additional questions put forward into the application process around the impact of the pandemic on our agencies or nonprofits, or was that pretty much kept as a standard application?
In the questions that CSAC posed to the groups, not all, but I'd say 80% of the groups were also asked an additional question about how has COVID impacted their organization and what changes have they made. And I do want to note, because the seniors had one that we did really like, and we are anxious to receive that feedback. They spoke about doing a survey with the seniors and trying to collect a little bit more information, which is fantastic for us to hopefully eventually get some information on that. But again, it was just part of the additional questions that may have been asked.
Thank you.
And I'm not seeing anyone else. I have one last question. So I know they didn't apply for it this year, but I understand the elder abuse program with SAFE is eligible through outside agencies or funding to support the staff person for that program. So I guess, was there any sense from, this might be to Councillor Hughes, was there any sense that there was, and I know you have a motion to deal with that kind of separately from the grant program, but you know, in times of watching our budget really closely, was there any sense that that would hit higher priority than some of the other applications?
So you're wondering if we discussed the elder abuse program? Is that what?
Well, or any sense that kind of elder abuse kind of in COVID times was higher priority than other things? I don't know if that was touched on at all.
You know, we only discussed what was in the applications. I did disclose to the committee that I had a motion coming forward that was specifically to address additional counseling and the keeping the elder abuse program going past from April to December of next year. And the committee was very supportive of that. So there was nobody who had any concerns with that, and they recognized it and they're like, that's good. And so I wanted to make sure that they knew that before they discussed the funding as well, so that they could make a decision whether or not they wanted full funding based on what I had from my motion, which may or may not pass. And they were fully supportive of giving whatever support that was necessary to help SAFE do their programs, because they understand the importance of what's happening and the extra pressures on family as a result of COVID. So, but they did not specifically discuss the elder abuse program or the merit of it, because it was not in the application. So the impression I just got is that SAFE just they didn't apply for it, right? And so, and it was after the fact. So we do have that. If they were to do that, we'd have even more issues and more stress on the remaining applications, because if we did say we're going to give them 25,000, now we have to lose another 25,000 across the board somewhere from other organizations. So one of the concerns that we have is that if we do this, there's going to be even more winners and losers in an area where really more resources are necessary, as opposed to saying that we're going to reallocate it at a further expense to other organizations, which are also struggling right now. But they did know about the motion. They did know it was for elder abuse, and they were supportive of that. But they were also grateful that they did not have to cut additional funding within this particular program to make that happen.
Thank you. On that note, Councillor McKay, go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just follow-up question to Anna Royer, and I'm sorry, in relation to elder abuse, does the St. Albert Seniors Association offer a program on elder abuse?
I don't feel I can answer that one, because I'm not sure. I know there's senior supports. I'm not sure.
Yeah, since we're in committee and we can break rules, can I invite Jonna to answer that question?
Good.
Thank you. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, we certainly provide safety planning or if someone walks in crisis, but we don't duplicate what's already in the community. So we would connect with the elder abuse section with SAFE, and the person would get support with that, or our 2 social workers would work together to make sure the person got the support they needed.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to go to Councillor Hughes next. Almost all of us are in a meeting in about 3 minutes. Do we just want to push through another 5-10 minutes to get this done and then go to our next meeting? I'm seeing yes. Yes. Okay. So Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Hit the wrong button. Okay, there we go, both buttons. I will be brief because I realize we have a time crunch. The positions that you're keeping right now, are you keeping, Jonah, I'm looking at you, are we keeping the social worker programs right now? Or, because you know, the community supports, out of the 7.5 that you currently have, are
Yes.
those being kept?
Yes, so we do still have our social worker that we will keep, and that's funded through FCSS, so we're doing that. We're also revamping what we're doing because we're seeing more of that sort of need than some of the other needs. So I've been pressed into service as a former social worker into doing some of the group facilitation and pieces that we want to do to support seniors.
And are you seeing, so you're seeing the demand for this being increasing then, is that correct?
It is, and it's changed. It's different than what it was before. It's not necessarily in crisis, but it's people that are just not feeling, they're struggling emotionally. They're struggling with the impact and needing that kind of a support.
Okay. So I'll just remind the committee, this is the recommendations of what came out of the committee, the previous committee, but council always has the option if they want to increase the budget past that, but the committee at our level could not go past that level of recommendations. So yeah. So just letting you know, that's what they had. And I said, if council wants to do more, they can do more, but it'll be council's prerogative and their budget to determine whether or not they want to do more or not. So I think that's it. Thanks.
Jonah, there's no such thing as a former social worker. You're always a social worker.
So we've actually got till 11 o'clock, so no rush on this. Any more questions about outside agencies or comments? Councillor Hanson and Watkins, you won't be entering into debate. Any comments going into it?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, Mayor Herron, go ahead.
I'm just letting you know that when you're ready, I can move the motion.
Okay, if there are no other questions, go ahead.
All right. I recommend that the Community Living Standing Committee recommend to council that the following applications for the 2021 Outside Agency Grant Program be approved. Number 1, the St. Albert Bereavement Fellowship for $7,668. St. Albert Housing Society for $44,650. St. Albert Seniors Association for $219,285. St. Albert Victim Services Association for $66,402. St. Albert Community Village and Food Bank, $107,985. Stop Abuse in Families for $42,800. The Mitchell Cultural Connections Company for $9,615. St. Albert and District Further Education Association, $23,474. St. Albert Family Resource Center, $45,174. And finally, the Visual Arts Studio Association of St. Albert for $27,685.
Thank you. Anything to open?
No, very similar to the comments made for the FCSS grants. Appreciate Councillor Hughes and the CSA committees really going through these with a lens of compassion, but also a lens of fiscal responsibility, because that is what we're facing. So it's very nice to be able to offer this kind of support to our not-for-profits in St. Albert.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm gonna support the motion, but I also think that it's between now and the next week when it's approved, you know, council does have the opportunity to review it and think about whether or not they want to reallocate anything that's coming forward, or if they want to increase the budget slightly to do that. So this is the first glance for the committee, but when it comes to full council, I think that this actually, you know, maybe something we just want to think about is that while the committee's working within parameters, council may have other decisions that come forward in the next 7 days. And so that they also just may approve it, but I'm just saying that it's a tough one because there is so many people's lives and so many people's organizations that are being affected by this decision. And so there might be opportunities for us to think about it. But for now, I will respect what's coming forward and we'll have that discussion. I think that really, in many ways, needs to be a council decision about whether or not we're changing the funding on this as opposed to a committee decision. So we'll go from there.
Do you, Councillor Mackay, anything? No? I would echo Councillor Hughes's comments about the next week. Today, I'm supporting this, but I feel very uneasy about the funding for victim services. Number one, their funding was reduced significantly provincially this year, and it is a vital program in St. Albert. I'm also very aware of the Y Station presentation we just received about really how we have to watch our pennies over the next while. And, you know, when reflecting on Councillor Hughes' upcoming motion about SAFE's elder abuse program, I absolutely want to support that program, but it might be best to support it under this existing grant program, even though they didn't go through the process. I mean, there's a difference between a policy and a bylaw. And so council does have the ability to add that to this program. And certainly that might be something that I want to consider over the next couple of weeks. With that, Mayor Heron to close.
I have nothing further.
Call for the vote. That's unanimous, and that's it. Unless I've missed anything, everyone can yell at me if I've missed something. No, this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you guys in 25 minutes.
A mantle of power, eh?